Memphis wanted to be in the Big 12. And if I'm the Pac-12, I'm picking up the phone.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Tulane's got Jake Retzlaff. Does that mean they get into the playoff? And Indiana, I want to fade them, but I can't do that as much as I would like. That's all coming up on today's show, but holy smokes, from every reporter that you could possibly name of note in the college football space, Memphis tried to pull an SMU. They wanted to provide hundreds of millions of dollars, which is roughly what SMU kind of, had total upfront costs, not taking media rights deals. They wanted to get into the Big 12, and the Big 12 said, nope, we're not. We're good. We're totally fine right here. Memphis, who's in the American, I've talked about Memphis for a while here on the show. If I'm the Pac-12, I'm picking up the phone and making a call. More on that in a moment. But when I've talked about them in the past, I've thought, I don't know that Memphis would go over to the Pac-12. They're in a really good spot. They're in a good position in the American. They are one of the premier athletic brands, not just in football, but in basketball as well. But from a football standpoint, which is, of course, the most important and drives most of the media rights valuation for all of these conferences across the country, Memphis is in a great position. They have shown an ability to succeed year after year after year. And their ability to make the college football playoff is incredibly realistic. I don't know that I can foresee a year in the next 5 years where Memphis is not a top 5 preseason odds team to get the Group of 5 playoff spot. I mean, this year, for instance, they don't have Seth Hennigan at quarterback anymore, but it's a program that is going to push for an American Conference championship, which is just the American Conference, by the way. No longer the AAC. This is just the American Conference, which is a small but I think pretty wise move. So them being in a good spot really made this a surprise to me. I did not expect for them to be in a position where they're almost kind of reeking of desperation to capitalize on something. The Big 12 hasn't been, reportedly shopping for new members. They're, of course, in a strong position to try and build themselves up to be a league that is perceptually better than the ACC. I think that's kind of the goal for the next, 5 to 7 years. Before, the early 2030s roll around and the next round of realignment maybe it happens before then, maybe it doesn't happen till then, maybe it doesn't happen at all. But everybody's always thinking about how they can be better. The Big 12 is in a really, really good position right now. They just had their first season with the new former Pac-12 schools, RIP, and I think that it went well. It's going to continue to succeed. Like, the Big 12's in a good spot. So I understand why the Big 12 said no, but where did the sudden desperation come for Memphis? Where did that come from? You have access to the play. Sure, you'd like to get more money, but wait a minute. You were going to take no media rights money? You were going to pull an SMU. SMU, it very much felt when they joined the ACC, strike while the iron is hot. It was capitalize on an opportunity while it is in front of you, because Stanford and Cal are probably going to go in the ACC, and hey, the league, if they're going to add, then they're going to be talking to other people. Go out and get them. The Big 12 is not adding anybody right now. The Big 12 doesn't need to add anybody. The power conferences, they're good for the time being. That doesn't mean it'll be that way forever. But for Memphis to have made a move like that, I don't think there's any downside here. The most hilarious post was proud members of the American Conference. They posted that after all these reports came out that they were desperately trying to leave. Like, are you really proud? You might be kind of proud. Are you super duper proud and happy to be there? Clearly not. So it was a strange, like, if this move happened, let's say 4 years from now, which it might again, I don't think that it would come off to me as nearly as strange as it does right now. Because what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to avoid missing out on? the Big 12 has made its moves and it's settled down. I don't think there's a similarity to when SMU got into the ACC, which brings me back to the Pac-12. Pick up the phone and make a call. The worst they're going to do is tell you no, as they already have before. But if they're not completely happy in the American, I don't know if Memphis changes your media rights valuation in a significant way, even if they were a football-only member. If they are willing to leave the American, though, you try and capitalize on that feeling as best you can. You know, it's like if you are trying to pitch your spouse on a big purchase that you want, that's a luxury purchase, quite frankly. Like maybe it's a boat of some kind. You got to wait until your spouse, I speak as a marriage expert here. I think you'd want to wait until your spouse is in like the right, like let's say a wife is trying to pitch the husband on, hey, we should buy a boat. And the husband's been, no, I don't think that's the right move for us financially. I don't think we can really afford. You know when you want to ask him, when he comes back from a golf trip with his buddies where he just cleaned up in his matches all week and came home with a little bit of extra cash. He's feeling good. That's not something you ask after his favorite sports team blows a 3-run lead in the 9th inning with a playoff berth on the line. That's not that's not when you go. But when there is a sense or a desire for any reason to leave, if I'm the Pac-12, go make the pitch. Go try and sell them on literally any. Now, are they going to take zero media rights dollars to go into the Pac-12? No. But there is something about the American, be it conference pedigree, strange. It's going to be the number 2 G5 conference behind the Pac-12 starting next year. It's probably the number 1 or 2 right now, along with the Mountain West. I'd probably say number 2, but it's certainly more comparable to this version of the Mountain West. I think it'll be behind the Pac-12, but in a good spot. There's some reason, money, pedigree, I don't know. I don't think that they're worried about the league having too many members leave or falling apart or anything like that. I just think that they're trying to get into that top tier. I think there's a real solid chance that Memphis did all of this knowing in the back of their minds, this is not actually going to happen right now. But now we've got it on people's radars, right? You go try and ask the girl out and you know she doesn't really know me. She's going to say no. But now you're on her radar. Sure, you're the guy that she said no to. But that's better than being the guy she doesn't know. Because then when you go back and ask again, wow, he's really persistent. You go back and ask, you know what? Okay, sure. I'll give you a chance. Maybe that's the way Memphis is approaching all of this. But there's no downside if you're the Pac-12 of calling. And if they are, in a space mentally of, we're not 100% satisfied with the situation we have here in the American, if the Pac-12 were to go to get him, holy smokes, would that be a big, big time move for the beloved Conference of Champions. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. Speaking of the American Conference, Jake Retzlaff, holy smokes. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, look guys, it's more than just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Do you have that one financial goal you've been wanting to reach for a while? Whatever it is, Monarch is here to help you achieve it. That is why you should go check them out. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. Jake Retzlaff goes to Tulane. I don't want to say I called it. I'll just say I pointed out that it was a good idea and could make sense. Now, the quarterback situation at Tulane is wild. TJ Finley was on his 5th school. there's an off-field incident. He's dismissed from the team. Insert Jake Retzlaff, who left BYU because of a violation of the honor code. He's with Tulane now, along with Brendan Sullivan and Caden Samanza, who, fun fact, I played in an online dynasty with Ball State. He's pretty good in the video game. I don't know if he's Tulane's starting quarterback going into this 2025 season, but Jake Retzlaff does not just raise the profile as a splash move for Tulane, he raises the likelihood that the Green Wave are the G5 playoff team this year. I still see them as the number 2 G5 favorite to get into the playoff behind Boise State. They don't have Ashton Genty. I think they've got a good rotation of running backs. Watch out for the name Sire Gaines. Their schedule's really favorable. I did their record prediction on Friday. I think they're going 11-1, 10-2 at worst. I think they'll be in the Mountain West Championship game. And if Boise State is there at 11-2 in the Mountain West, they won't have a ton of quality wins. And that's where this gets interesting. I think their brand power of being Boise State, having just been in the playoff and putting up a respectable effort against Penn State last year that went to the semifinal, I think that gives Boise State an ingrained advantage over a team like Tulane. However, the Green Wave are in the S&P Plus rankings by Bill Connolly over at ESPN, ranked behind Boise State. Their strength of schedule, however, is tougher, and understandably so. Retzlaff being there is, I think, such a good move. You know, Brendan Sullivan or Caden Samanza, like, Retzlaff should be the guy. They start fall camp next week. The expectation is he gets enrolled and starts rolling along. I don't think you bring in Jake Retzlaff unless you really think that he's going to be your starting quarterback. And does that stink for a guy like Brendan Sullivan, who maybe saw TJ Finley's departure as an opportunity to start? Yeah, it does. This is a results-driven business, though. And John Sumrall, who got off to a 9-2 beginning, took over for Willie Fritz, wasn't sure what was happening at quarterback. Darian Mensah emerges. He's at Duke now. More on that in a little bit. 9-2, Tulane began last year, lost their final 3 games of the season. Was not what they were hoping for. Got to the American Championship game, lost to Army. Don't forget about that. I'll have more on them in just a moment. But this is a Tulane team that ranks in the top 50 in the S&P Plus rankings at number 48, higher than several Power 4 schools like UCLA, for instance. That doesn't mean they beat them on the field. They are playing Northwestern week 1, and they're a 6.5-point favorite. Former SMU quarterback Preston Stone is probably going to be Northwestern starting quarterback this year, and Tulane is a 6.5-point home favorite. I think they will win that game. And yes, I'm getting to Tulane's record right here, because Retzlaff, I think, raises both the floor and the ceiling for what the Green Wave can be. I just watched him orchestrate. His numbers were not blowing anybody away. Turned the ball over a little bit too much in the Big 12, but now his schedule is not going to be as difficult. He's not going to face as quality of an opponent on a weekly basis as what he did with BYU's schedule last year in the Big 12. Now, the interesting thing about Tulane's schedule here is that there's a really high possibility or high likelihood of volatility with their record. I think John Sumrall is a really good coach. Bringing in Retzlaff at quarterback, really good move. Makes a lot of sense. Doesn't just keep them at the playoff level TJ Finley could have perhaps had them at. I think he might even raise that level a little bit. BYU was in the playoff discussion last year. Nobody saw that coming. What happens when you give Retzlaff a team that does have legitimate playoff aspirations? We are about to find out. I think Tulane winds up at 9-3, but there could be some volatility here. The Green Wave could go 7-5. The Green Wave could go 11-1. I think they have one of the biggest potential ranges of the season. So Northwestern week 1, anytime you're a G5 playing a Power 4, even one like Northwestern, who I don't expect a lot of this year, David Braun is not a bad coach. They weren't a great team last year. The year before, everybody forgets, David Braun came in, took a 1-11 team, and they went 8-5. Don't look at David Braun and the Wildcats and think, oh, they're an academic power. What's going on with their football stadium? Are they like? That's not a game that Tulane can just roll through. But the advantage they have over Boise State is the volatility or potential volatility in their record. Because if they go out and have the same record as Boise, they might get the advantage if they win the American compared to Boise winning the Mountain West because of the opponents they have on their schedule. Boise goes at Notre Dame, and other than that, no Power 4 opponents. UNLV, I don't think will be as good as last year. So Boise's going to play the stack wins game, which is perfectly viable as we've seen. Tulane could have more quality wins. I'm taking Tulane over 8.5 wins because I like John Summerall and I like this Retzlaff move a lot for the Green Wave. I would stay away from the win total personally because, man, it's a tough schedule. So they open with Northwestern. I think they win that game. They go at South Alabama. Do not sleep on the Jaguars in the Sun Belt. I think Tulane will win that game. Then it gets exciting. The Green Wave continue their run of playing a quality non-conference schedule as they have in the last couple of years. They've played Kansas State as they did a season ago. They played Oklahoma last year. They've played a lot of quality opponents. Week 3. Game 3. I'm pretty sure it's week 3 as well. They play Duke at home. Darian Mensah, who unexpectedly burst onto the scene for the Green Wave last year and left before their bowl game against Florida, that's Duke's starting quarterback. He got a lot of money to go there. Now he's going to come back at the school that made him into a transfer portal candidate for a Power 4 school. For Manny Diaz going into year 2, trying to establish something. I tell you what, if you are a Group of 5 football fan, you are going to be dialed into that game. If you're not a Group of 5 football fan, you should be dialed into that game. That is one of the best under-the-radar non-conference matchups of the college football season. I can't wait for that game. Can't wait. Duke's a good team, too. I've got them power rated 6th in my ACC standings or ACC preseason power rankings. Duke is a good football team. So, and I expect them to be again. I think Duke goes in and beats Tulane. I think it's going to be a really fun football game. That could be a coin flip. Next week at Ole Miss, I'm not going to pick them to go into SEC country and win. I think that's a loss. Then Tulsa and East Carolina on the road and at home respectively. I think those will be wins for the Green Wave. And then the 3-game stretch that will define after or aside from their Power 4 opponents. If they win 2 of those Power 4 games, if they beat Northwestern and Duke, they're going to have an advantage over Boise State. If they beat Northwestern but lose to Duke and Ole Miss, it's going to be close. It is going to be close, but will hinge on what happens in this 3-game stretch. Army at UTSA at Memphis. Yikes. I mean, yikes. Probably the 3 best teams not named Tulane on paper going into the 2025 season in the American. That's a brutal 3-game stretch. I don't think they'll win both road games. I think they will split UTSA and Memphis. I'll take them in an American Conference Championship revenge game rematch against Army at home. They close with NAU at Temple and Charlotte. They'll win those games no problem. They housed Temple and Charlotte last year, who have got new staffs. I don't think FAU is going to go in there and win. So I think it'll be 3 or 4 straight wins to end the year for the Green Wave. I've got them 9-3. If they make the American Championship game, which in this scenario they probably would, unless UTSA and I don't think they could have one conference loss and not make the championship. I don't know. Tiebreakers can get weird and crazy and such. If they get in there and win and they go 10-3, I don't know. I don't know if. I think it depends on how the games are played, how they look, how the committee will view all that sort of stuff. It'll be a fascinating conversation. If you have a 10-3 American Conference champion Tulane and let's say 12-1 Mountain West champion Boise, whose best win is against unranked UNLV, what do you do? I think Boise gets the nod. I don't know. But if that shifts to 11-2 Tulane, champions of the American, with a win over Duke, which would be better than any singular win Boise State would have on their schedule, that could get spicy. That could get really, really spicy. I can't wait for football right around the corner. So, The Green Wave making headlines. Indiana made headlines last year. How big is the fall off going to be? First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Well, maybe it's game day, and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands rather than watching at home. That is exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress of buying tickets. Seriously, Game Time makes it really easy for you. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, which is the only two things that it should ever be. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I've used it on a couple of occasions, and the process was great. I got a great deal, knew what to expect, got it delivered to my phone, no problem, and no surprise fees at checkout. That is maybe my favorite part. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase when you download the Game Time app. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Does Indiana step back or way back in 2025? Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers is here. Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast, an Indiana alum, is also here. And it's fight night here at Locked On College Football. If you're watching or listening to the show at night, it's even more applicable. Goins is going to yell at me here. Well, he's not going to literally yell. He's not Gus Johnson, but
I might.
He might get an elevated voice. So, it's record prediction season here at Locked On College Football, gentlemen, and I'm going through and hitting off all the heavy hitters and then some. Indiana falls into that category. Their preseason win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, is 8.5. I do like them over. I instinctually want to take them under because I think they are a pullback team from last year. I don't know if Mendoza is Curtis Rourke, but Cignetti's track record with quarterbacks pretty darn good. The schedule, however, I see 3 losses. I think 10-2 is more likely than 8-4. I've settled on 9-3. I think they lose. Goins, get ready. I think they lose their first Big Ten game of the year at home to Illinois. I'm sorry, Hoosier fans. I love the Illini too much. I think they lose at Oregon. I think they lose at Penn State. They are sizable double-digit underdogs in both of those contests. Jacob, I will turn it over to you. 9-3 for the Hoosiers. Do you see it?
I think 9-3 is an acceptable year 2, given the magical season of year 1, right? Double-digit wins, college football playoff, the greatest season in the history of Indiana football. Brian can speak to that even more than I can. I mean, there's just so much.
Sorry, Jacob, did you just call Brian old?
No, I call Brian seasoned is what we'll go with. It's the fact that he's watched Indiana football a little bit longer than I have, but he can speak to what I'm talking about. The fact that Indiana football before Curt Cignetti sucked. It was terrible. It was literally the most losing program in the history of college football. And then Curt Cignetti showed up, and you make it to the college football playoff. And so, sure, the step back is inevitable in some places. But the fact is, the roster may have gotten better than it was last year. From last year to this year, I think the offensive line is better. Funny enough, I think the running back room is just as good. And I think the peak of Fernando Mendoza is higher than what we got with Curtis Rourke. So if he stays healthy, you're talking about a guy that could be a dark horse sitting in New York. There's a percentage floating out there that he could be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft.
Oh, okay.
That's what the Hoosiers have, and the defense is going to be just as good, which was ranked number 1 in the nation statistically last year. And so how is it all this crazy thing that Indiana can't win 10 games and can't get back to the college football playoff? They're not losing to Illinois at home in their Big Ten opener. It's not gonna happen. It won't.
Well, but before we work Brian into the fold, I will allow guests to run wild and speak for themselves here on this program as the executive producer. I will allow a certain level of tomfoolery. If you say Fernando Mendoza and number 1 pick in the NFL draft again, I'm going to get you kicked out of this network.
12%.
I assure you Blackerby likes me more than you.
I don't know. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. But I'm just saying, man, Indiana's roster might just be better than it was last year, and that's a team that made it to the college football playoff. Road games at Oregon and Penn State, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to say, yep, got them, W, undefeated. No, that's ridiculous. I do think Indiana has a better chance to beat Oregon on the road than they do Penn State on the road, but it's still going to be a double-digit underdog, a tough game to win, and I'm not crazy. But I'm the only one in this call, and I know Brian's on the other side here, that says that Indiana is going to lose to Illinois. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Brian, talk some sense into this, man.
All right, there's a few things working here against my alma mater. Number one, nobody, as you rightfully said, Jacob, really circled Indiana on the schedule for a reason. They were awful. One of the first years I followed college football in the early 80s, you know what they went? 0-11. So they've been terrible for literally 0-11.
Ooh.
I think it was 84, but I was like, oh my God. Nobody like where I lived followed anything besides Indiana basketball. That's why it's been ever since. Until, as you said, Cignetti came. Now everybody's going to circle them. It's different being the hunted or being the hunted. I need to see Indiana in that situation. Number two, Jacob, correct me, 13 guys came with Cignetti from his old job.
Yes.
Those may be transfers, but not really. They're not going to have that same advantage this year, and that's very, very important. And then finally, I had a chance to see Mendoza play in high school. I had a chance to see him in that game, Cal at Auburn last year. He's a good player, and I think he could be a pretty darn good player this year. He's still not going to just dominate. I think it will be harder, and I agree with everybody here. Penn State and Oregon, if they lose to Indiana, it's going to be more on them than IU. I would take Illinois because they got more physicality than Indiana, although that should be one of the best games of the Big Ten this next season, win or lose for Indiana, Illinois. I would take Illinois because I think Luke Altmaier, I would take him over Mendoza, which if you'd have said that to me a year ago, I probably would not have. And
that game's in Bloomington. I do want people to, if you don't know, if that game is in Champaign, I feel a whole different way. I just want to put that out there. If the Hoosiers had to go, because that is the first real game of the season, which is concerning to me, absolutely, because, Indiana does play the hardest non-conference schedule in college football this year, right in front of Penn State, to where we're going to be 3-0 and the season's going to be boring until we play Illinois. I am absolutely worried about that factor, but I think pound for pound, man for man, talent for talent, Indiana's better than Illinois. I'm on record saying that.
That's part of the reason that I'm behind Illinois winning that game unless Luke Altmaier gets injured in fall camp or something, because I think for the first 3 weeks it will be a breeze. And I think that one tune-up game in the non-conference can be a really valuable thing for a school. Yeah. But when you play 3 in a row and you're used to just cruise, and then Illinois, it's not like Minnesota is coming in there or UCLA with Nico, Minnesota's a physical football team, but or Purdue is coming in there or anything. No. This is Illinois. This is going to be a big boy smash mouth game. They are going to run 26 power, I hope 74 times in the game, and call 2 play action passes. And I don't know how ready Indiana is going to be for that particular moment. By the way, Brian, I got to give you your props here. The 0-11 season was indeed in 1984, in the first year of the Bill Mallory era. That is quite the pull. Yikes. In case you doubt that we are sickos for college football here at the network. But Goins, I wanted to start with you on this and then get Brian's thoughts as well. What's your best and worst case scenario for Indiana record-wise, presuming no major injuries?
I think 10-2 is the best case scenario. Saying anything better is starting to get a little crazy. I'll just be honest. But winning the games that you're supposed to, competing in the games that you're not supposed to, being Oregon and Penn State, and beating Illinois, beating Wisconsin, heck, even having to go on the road and beat Iowa. That's a game that I'm a little bit worried about, because not that Indiana's worse than Iowa, but you got to go on the road, and that's the first road trip of the year. And so, I think best case scenario, 10-2, have a say, make it to the college football playoff. Worst case scenario is you take a major step back. I'm talking losing those first 2 games to Illinois and Iowa, letting a Michigan State or a UCLA come to Bloomington and beat you. Heck, losing to Purdue at the end of the season's worst case scenario. That's on a Friday night. That's Black Friday, by the way, for the first time in the history of that rivalry. And
gosh, Barry Odom is going to be so happy.
And so, I mean, worst case scenario, I don't have a specific number, but I think anything under 8 wins would be massively disappointing. And even 8-4, it's going to be like, well, maybe it was just a one-hit wonder. I don't think that's the case, but I'm afraid that's what the narratives would be.
Brian, best worst case scenario?
I could see 7-5 if things went wrong injury-wise, but otherwise, I think I'm pretty much there with Jacob. 8-4. The Iowa thing, by the way, that is a very difficult place to play. If that is your first quote unquote road contest, that's not
which
friendly.
It is.
Ain't no quote unquote about it. It is the first one. And for the record, that Illinois game, the Hoosiers will have an extra day of rest because the final non-con game against Indiana State's on a Friday night. So I hate it, but if that gives an extra advantage to the Hoosiers, then by all means, let me
Indiana and schedule manipulation. Wow, where have I heard that before? I think I heard some college football podcaster talking about that, like on Friday.
I don't want to talk about it.
Week. Brian wants to talk about it, though. I imagine that's what you wanted to talk about, Brian.
Yeah, the text I sent you this morning, I was pretty ticked off. Like, as an alum, dropping Virginia, who's, let's just be blunt, is not exactly a power in football. And from what I was hearing, the team they're going to add is Austin Peay. I don't know if that's accurate, but anything of that variety is pathetic.
I have called a game at Austin Peay before.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Clarksville is a wonderful downtown area.
Okay, great. I'm sure the beer was fantastic.
Thank you.
But the bottom line is still the same. If you're going to ascend in college football, you got to beat some people. Let me give you a little clue. And here, Spencer, if you want to do some research for fun, go look at early 80s Florida State schedules. There was a year the Noles played like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Nebraska, and LSU like consecutively on the road. Yeah, that's how they climbed, and that's why recruits wanted to go there. Do you think Indiana's going to recruit better playing Austin Peay to either one of you? Really?
No.
Austin Peay? Who cares? Now, I happen to know that's in Tennessee, and you just gave that. Most people wouldn't know what state that's in because it's Austin Peay. Yeah. Indiana is taking the soft route after they got laughed about because they didn't play well against Notre Dame. They made the playoff, but the schedule was weak last year. They're not helping themselves. I know the butts and seats, we need money to pay for Title IX sports is the reason, but they got to find a way around it. You can't do this consistently and move up. It's a terrible.
Well, even if that's the thinking, I feel like fans would rather see Virginia than another game against a team you're going to beat by 50 points. Like
And this is the second time the Hoosiers have done this. I just want that to go on the record. Second time they've done that. Oh, goodness, I can't remember. It was another middle-of-the-pack non-con team. But then, we're adding, Austin Peay and another game against Kennesaw State and things like that. I'm with you on that. I hate this.
And it's the premise. It's the premise of it that bugs me. You know, I don't need you to schedule Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU, but have any Power 4 opponent any Power 4 opponent. You don't know what they're going to be. You know, the point I made on Friday is, hey, what if you'd scheduled a 2026-27 home and home with Indiana literally 2 years ago? It would have felt about the same as scheduling Virginia right now. Well, suddenly, that hypothetical home and home with Indiana looks and feels a heck of a lot different for whoever would have done that. Like, you don't know how things can change in a Power 4. Like, putting Wake Forest on the schedule right now. What if Jake Dickert comes in and just turns them around right away? Like, if it can happen at Indiana, I think it can happen just about anywhere. And I'm glad that we are in agreement that this is not a good thing for the sport. I'm going to close with a piece of trivia for you guys, just because I'm a nerd. Can either of you tell me the mascot for Austin Peay?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know.
The Governors. They have got a Mr. Peanut Monopoly looking mascot. He's got a spectacle. It's sensational.
Speaking of mascots, I know we got to go. Have you seen the Hoosiers' new mascot? Have you seen who's
Oh,
making
wait,
an
no, I
appearance
haven't.
in
The
game one?
Bison. Yeah,
The Bison is back, baby. Game 1, the Bison. Hoosier, the Bison is back. Look it
Hoosier
up.
the Bison.
Yep, look
Yes.
it up.
You got to look it up.
Okay,
It's a pretty
okay.
neat looking mascot.
That's
It is.
first thing I'm doing once we hop off of here. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers, Brian Smith, the Portal Podcast in Indiana grad. That'll do it for today. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.